Welcome back. So, here's a question for you. Have you ever been to Yorktown? Yorktown. What a great place to be. The only thing greater than living in Yorktown is running it. My name is Vin Dacquino. Our guest is Lanny Gilbert.
Vin?
Hey, you run the town. Talk to me a little about who is Lanny Gilbert. Were you born in Yorktown?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, where were you born?
I was born in the city,
wow.
back in New York City, and raised in Queens. I was a product of the public school system over there, the PSs, PS 173.
That's learning by fire.
That's right. And went to the junior high school, and then ultimately was a product of the State University system. Went to Binghamton, SUNY Binghamton, and then Hofstra Law School. In my prior life, before the supervisor, I was a court attorney referee down in Bronx Supreme Court dealing with criminal matters.
Lanny, my granddaughter is 12 years old. There is no doubt in her mind. What are you going to be when you get older? She said, a lawyer. Mm-hmm. She's been saying that since she was 10.
Wow. When
did you know you needed to be a lawyer?
You know, it's funny. While in college, was sort of at the moment when I had that transformation. I majored in political science, followed in my sister's footsteps. Actually,
oh really?
I had two sisters. Unfortunately, lost a sister to lung cancer. She left a legacy of 3 beautiful children that we helped raise. But my other sister also went to Binghamton, went to law school, and she was working in the court system. And I was fascinated with the Constitution.
Was there.
The Constitution was something that was fascinating.
Wow. And speaking of Constitution, you fight for people's rights. That's exactly why you're in Yorktown. There are some things that you just feel need to be done and need to be addressed. And that's why you're in public office. I'm not going to lie to you. Politicians blow my mind. Why would you stand up in front of an entire town and literally expose yourself every day? Because you know there's 2 sides to every coin. And everything you say, someone has to say, that's wrong. You know, so it's a difficult position to be in.
It is.
You really do have to believe in what you do. And, oh my God, you were a judge. All the more to be able to hear people's sides of the story and to say, okay, I'm going to have to make a decision. You know, and it's not always black and white. You know, there's so many gray areas, and you have to be able to make some very important decisions.
Absolutely.
So you're back in high school. You're doing what you need to do. You're thinking law, but it's not quite there yet until you get to college.
I was actually a very shy person in high school back in the day. And it wasn't until law school when we had mock trials and things like that
that's my granddaughter loves.
They sort of bring that out in you. And then ultimately, when I worked in the court system, I clerked for a judge. So I wasn't either a prosecutor or a defense attorney. I was, as you said, working to try to make sure that justice was done. And but again, I was sort of behind the scenes. I felt like I was apprenticing for all those years. And then ultimately, I ran for town judge up in Yorktown. I served for 5 years. And it was at that point where I really came out of my shell. The first time I had to sit in front of an audience of 150 people.
And you're the judge. They're listening to you.
Exactly.
You are the focus of the attention.
Exactly.
That's tough to do if you're shy and quiet.
Well, I'm no longer shy and quiet.
That brings it out.
And you know, it's funny, you say, why politics? When you run for judge, you run on your resume. You don't really run on issues. It's a different type of politics. And that's really that was my comfort zone for a long time. But then, after I left the bench, I just wasn't happy with the direction I was seeing the town going in. But I saw the town reflecting what was going on nationally, and I love the town of Yorktown. Yorktown's a wonderful town.
We have some wonderful shots of Yorktown.
Yep. Well, that's
there
Town
it is,
Hall.
good old Yorktown.
That's where I work, and that's the building in which I work. And I have an open door policy for anyone that has any issues that want to come in.
Come right in.
Just come
That's
in.
wonderful.
But I wanted to change the tone of government in Yorktown. I wanted to change the way.
Yeah.
Again, there's Town Hall. You go up into the main entrance, and you go upstairs, and that's my office. The first floor, you have all the different departments, and in the lower level you have different departments as well.
And there's the flag flying proudly.
Yes. The first floor, basically, the town clerk's office is in, and her name is Diana Quast. She's a wonderful town clerk, and again, I couldn't do the job I do without everyone else who works in that building. It's a team. It's a team effort. We have that is, speaking of team, that is our fire department in the town of Yorktown Heights. And we have volunteers, we have paid professionals in terms of the other department heads, but most of the individuals that work in the fire department are volunteers. So it's an amazing, it's an amazing conglomeration of.
It's an interesting town because there's not like a downtown as such.
There are actually 5 hamlets.
Yeah.
There are 5, and then actually there are 7, but there are 5 that are generally pronounced. You have Shrub Oak, you have Jefferson Valley, you have Crompond, you have Yorktown Heights.
Now here's the big thing. When I first moved up to Mahopac, sometimes called Mahopac, people said to me, "Do you know where Yorktown Heights is?" And I would tell them, and they'd go, "Well, no, that's Yorktown." What's the difference between Yorktown and Yorktown Heights?
Well, that's exactly it. I would campaign up in Shrub Oak, and I would say, or Mohegan and Mohegan Lake. That's another one of our hamlets. And I would campaign there, and I'd say, "You from Yorktown?" And they'd say, "No, I'm from Mohegan Lake." And I'd say, "No, you're from Yorktown." Yorktown is Yorktown is 40 square miles in size, and it has approximately 38,000 population.
Wow.
If it were in the Midwest, it would probably be considered a small city. So it's it's quite a an area.
It's funny. I lived in Mahopac for a few years before I realized that I lived in the hamlet of Mahopac. I was calling it the village, and they said, it's not a village. It's a hamlet. So a hamlet is like inside a village is inside a town.
That's correct.
And a town is inside
the county.
a county.
That's right.
So
that's right.
It takes a little while, but
yes,
you figure it all out.
Yes, it does.
And you're in Westchester County.
We are. We're in the northern, which again, it spans, the town begins south of the reservoir. If you're familiar with the bridge that you come over the Croton Reservoir, we're actually south of the reservoir around the Pine Bridge exit for the Taconic.
That has some historical background.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
And then we extend all the way up to the Putnam border.
Wow.
And then again we go from. I know the jurisdiction because I was the town judge as well, so I know what the jurisdiction.
Know,
So we go from Lexington Avenue basically to Route 118 as it comes up near Somers. And
so you're pretty engrossed in the town and all of its doings. I strongly encourage those people who have not been to Yorktown to go to the Grange Fair, to go to the Fireman's Field Day behind the firehouse.
We have additional events. We have now a ball drop at New Year's Eve. The chamber has created.
Quite a
yes. Except ultimately, it's unfortunately weather-driven. We had one year where we had to cancel because it was sub-zero. But on the whole, we have great volunteers. It's a joint partnership with the chamber and the town, and we also now have a San Gennaro feast that goes for 4 or 5 days in the town.
I went 2 years ago, and said, "I'll be here every year." The food is wonderful. I get little rice balls.
Yeah.
And,
and the Zeppeli.
Yes, you name it, it's there.
Yes.
And you meet the Yorktown people.
Mm-hmm.
They're laughing and talking, and they're together. The music is playing. It's really a wonderful hometown feel.
It really
I grew
is.
up in Utica, New York, and there were street festivals throughout the city, and it was the opportunity to meet each other.
Absolutely.
And to see who the people are. I'm always overwhelmed.
Well, we also host other charitable events.
tell
We
me, yeah.
do Relay for Life, which
yes.
every summer, and that draws a crowd, and we raise an enormous amount of money. We're generally one of the highest contributors to the fight against cancer, and it's wonderful. And it's those events that really, I do the nitty-gritty daily grind in terms of my meetings every Tuesday night and working on town business, but it's those events that make the job so much fun.
I have a tough question for you.
Sure.
What goes on in that town that makes you say, I want to live here?
Why I want to live there? Well, again, it was...
And raise 5 children.
Yes. Well, again, it comes back to, I'll tell you a very funny story. While I was the town judge, unfortunately, I had a minor car accident, but significant enough that I broke my big toe, and I was sort of had to have the foot elevated for almost 6 weeks, and it was a very difficult time. While I was there, I'd get a knock on the door, and I'd send my child to the door, and I'd say, could you find out who that is? And it was a police officer in the town bringing a lasagna from the clerks in the court. It was sort of like, I felt like I was in Mayberry. It was, I know that. It's a big town, but it's a small town. People know one another,
My
and it's
former
wonderful.
principal from Pelham lives in Yorktown.
Okay.
And, it's a great place. I go there every year at Christmas to be Santa Claus for his neighbors.
Okay.
And every Christmas, they all gather at his house, and they bring their little children. And some of the little children are now adults bringing their children. And it's Mayberry.
And as we have our Holiday Lights Parade, that's another one of the events. And as the tradition is, the supervisor is Santa Claus. And I was the first fully Jewish Santa Claus this year.
That's funny.
But I had a wonderful time. It was so wonderful seeing the expressions on the kids' faces, and it's just wonderful.
Down home, and yet there's so much going on. And I imagine you have your difficulties. I also see that there's some major building going on right
Yes,
now.
we have a new Lowe's project that's in the works, and we
Yeah.
have some other development where I'm trying to be business friendly, but I'm also constituent friendly. I want to make sure that I believe I have a fiduciary duty to my residents and to make sure things are done right.
I was thrilled to see Lowe's come in.
Yes.
But I'm sure there's concerns about parking, there's concerns about
Traffic.
driving and traffic.
Infrastructure. What I've, I mentioned to you before, not as we talked before, the term of the supervisor is 2 years. I'm in the middle of my first term, and I'm not overwhelmed, obviously. I've had, like I said, 35 years in the court system. Dealing with it. I was 12-year volunteer on the town conservation board. I know the town. I know how it operates. I know they're dealing with court administration, finances, and all of that. With that said, the office of supervisor you wear so many hats. You're basically overseeing
And this is
all
only
the
a
other departments.
2-year term, right?
The first year is a year of firsts.
Yeah.
It's your first budget. It's your first negotiations with unions.
And just
or
when you learn it
discussions.
and you get it all set,
And you're running for
you have to
office
run
again.
again.
Right.
And
So
that's not easy.
that's the way it is. I'm not.
No.
But it's the reality of it, and I deal with it. But I hope that eventually, as I approach the end of my term, that people will be happy with the job I'm doing.
One of the things that surprised me most about Yorktown is that it goes from like 35 and 202 all the way around to where Lowe's is going to be.
Correct.
All the way down 202. That's a long
All the way
distance.
down to Lexington Avenue.
To Lexington
and
Avenue,
that's,
yeah.
That's the
And
the
that's
division.
a
with-
long, and,
yes.
and you know, I'm always surprised. I saw Grandma's Pies, and I saw that the address was Yorktown, and I said, wait a minute.
Right.
It's not Yorktown. Yorktown's on the other side of the Taconic.
That's right. Well,
But it
actually,
is.
and just beyond Grandma's Pies, right
Yeah.
around where the 202 diner is,
Right.
they actually have a Cortland address,
Wow.
Cortland Manor, but it is Yorktown.
Wow.
So it's and as
Yeah.
like we talked
a
about,
big
there's
area.
Mohegan Lake is Yorktown, and so is Shrub Oak
Yeah.
and Jefferson
Yeah,
Valley.
that,
and-
that surprised me too.
Right.
Shrub Oak was part of Yorktown. See, it's very difficult for people to understand how hamlets work.
Right.
You know, that there's little areas within the big area.
Right, right.
So you have a big area to govern.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
So a lot that you need to know. What is the most difficult part of your job?
I hate to say it, but it's and I hate about it is the politics. It gets in the way of getting things done. And again, that's what I.
There's two
when I
sides
ran,
to every issue.
but when I ran, I wanted. You know, we truly have more that unites us than divides us as people and as citizens of our town, of our county, of our state, and of our country. And I want to bring that message forward. And that's what I've been trying to do, and I hope that people, see that that's what we're accomplishing, and that's the most difficult challenge is to try to get away from that 10-second, gotcha moment, or that just to get over on the other side.
Is supervisor full time?
It is a full-time
So
position.
you're not a judge.
No,
at the moment.
again, 35 years in the court system.
Yeah.
And while I was in the court system, I was a part-time judge in the town.
Oh wow.
So I was doing two jobs.
Yeah. Wow.
But the supervisor position, as soon as I won the election in November, that November,
Right.
I retired from my job down in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And so it was a win-win.
But
I
once
no
a
longer-
judge, always a judge.
That's true. I
People-
have that
yeah.
judicial demeanor.
I hear it. Same thing me with teaching. People say, you retired from teaching, right? So you're not a teacher anymore? I said, wrong. I'm a teacher every day of my life to the day I die.
Right, right.
You know, whether it's teaching veterans how to write, or I work with a whole number of writers at the Mayapack Library, and I work with kids with writing. Once a teacher, always a teacher. Once a
Absolutely.
judge, always a judge.
Absolutely.
But you're right. I understand that politics is tough because you may know exactly what the town needs, but so does somebody else.
But you know what? I think that differentiated me from my opponent in the last
Right.
election in terms of I'm of the belief as a judge that
Yeah.
you gather as much information as you possibly
That's
can.
right.
So
Before you
I
make
am
a
not.
decision.
I am not. I should say. I don't have such a big ego that I believe I know everything. So I think we have a lot of smart people in the town, and that's what I've been trying to do,
Yeah,
is
that's
to
important.
attract people
It's
to
also,
come give their opinions.
not to blow up your ego, but wow, how lucky they are to have a judge to sit there, because I mean that's what you need in politics. You need somebody who can see both sides, weigh both sides, and there's the justice. You need to say, okay, I hear you, I hear you. You don't have to agree with everybody, but you do have to hear what they have to say.
Right, right.
And sometimes, surprisingly, it does change how you feel, and you have to be open to that.
Right, exactly.
And that's they're very lucky.
Thank you.
in having that.
Thank you.
Community center. You have a huge community center right smack in the middle of town. A lot going on in there. There's the theater in there.
Yes. I want to actually increase the use of that theater. One of the thoughts I had was trying to renovate it to allow movies to be shown, for
Oh,
example,
wow, that
and
would
to
be
have
great.
presentations.
Nice.
And I think there are certain things in the town. Again, when I came in,
Yep.
I believe that there were certain things that were underutilized.
Those were going to be my next questions. What was there that needed to be changed? What needed to be added? What are some of those things that you could say, this is part of my dream for Yorktown?
Okay, well, again, I ran on a platform of filling vacant stores before we start building more. You know, there are a lot of reasons why
Yeah.
people move up to Yorktown, and part of it is its bucolic
Yep.
nature.
Yeah.
But also you have to, as we just talked about, you have to have a balance in terms
Yeah.
of, you know, but you need the business because you need
Yeah.
business to keep the tax base down. I know all of that, but again, I created there were basically two things that I ran on. The first was based upon business, and that's very important. And I created a new business revitalization committee, and they've come up with ideas because you know what? I believe that the prior administrations, it's the definition of insanity. You keep doing the same thing over and over
Yeah.
again. So I wanted people to look. I wanted a group of people, business people. I have architects. I have a banker. I have realtors on this committee, and I want them to think outside the box and see
Yeah.
what can we do.
What do we have?
What
and
do we?
what can we do better?
Exactly, exactly. Yorktown has farms,
Yeah.
enormous amount.
Oh,
we have
yeah.
the farms. We have the largest hiking
yeah.
trail system in the entire
Yeah.
state. So there are things. We're not a waterfront. We're not
No,
Peekskill.
no.
We're not. But but you have to understand what you are.
Yep.
Redefine yourself or define yourself,
Yep.
and then attract businesses based on that.
Yeah, I hear you. And because you do have some big spaces that are still
Mm-hmm.
still vacant. Got to be filled. Now, Kmart went down almost everywhere, but it's still thriving there.
It's funny. Well, it's funny you should say that. I jokingly said that I've been in constant contact with the managing agent of that shopping
Wow.
center, and we've been at cross purposes. When I heard Kmart's were closing, I was crossing my fingers saying, I
Yes,
hope it's
please,
not my
not that one.
Kmart because I want it available and I want the tax roll. They've been saying, you know what, we want a more viable anchor store. If we had a more viable anchor store, we'd be
Yeah.
able to attract more business in the town.
Yeah, and you
So
unfortunately lost that.
we lost Sears.
Yeah.
We lost Sears.
And you lost that wonderful, I forgot what it was, the grocery store
The
that's
Food
right
Emporium, and now
Yeah,
that's
Food
been
Emporium.
empty now for 8 years, and it's
Yeah,
very
it's-
for 8 or 9 years,
hard.
and that was one of the things. And I from what I understand, is they are in negotiation with they wouldn't divulge to me who's coming in, but they said that they
Someone's coming in.
Well, that's what
We hope.
that's what the managing agent
That's
told me.
wonderful. I mean, you need that.
Yes,
And you
yes.
know, it is a wonderful place to stroll,
Mm-hmm.
even though it's not a downtown as such.
Mm-hmm.
That whole Triangle Shopping Center, that whole area is a good place to spend a Saturday afternoon.
That's
you know,
true.
you go. There's these little shops.
Well, the biggest issue in the Heights, and we're talking about, there's now supposedly a development looking at the old Roma building being
Oh.
refurbished, and then some additional housing now being put right behind, adjacent to it. But the biggest problem with that intersection, as we
Yep.
just talked about, the 35-202,
Right.
is that you want to join, if you're going to truly make Yorktown a walkable town,
Right.
yeah, it's got to be done in phases. But one of the
Right.
first thing you have to do is be able to join those 4 quadrants
Yeah.
and to do it safely. Like one of the developers said, well, we're going to create these apartments. They'll be able to walk over to Edwin's Deli for lunch. And I said, if they can cross 202 without
Yeah.
getting killed,
That's
you know,
right.
it's got
202 is a busy
you need
thoroughfare.
you need exactly. So you need what I think you need and I've been up to the DOT. I've had discussions with them because of this mini master plan that we
Yeah.
created,
Yeah.
and we want to create potential lights and crosswalks to join those 4 quadrants. And I think that's the start of creating a walkable downtown.
Well, your dreams are real, and I've heard some wonderful, favorable things.
Thank you.
It's one of the reasons why you're here today. Make Yorktown a place to live. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you.
I hope the voters hear this. I hope they understand that this show is about passion, and so are you. Someone who's a judge, you already had a job, you know, and you took this job because you believe in it, and you believe in your town, and you believe in your people. I hope they hear that. I hope they give you another couple years to prove who you are and what you believe.
Thank you.
May you and Yorktown thrive.
I really appreciate that.
Well,
Thank
I
you so
appreciate
much.
having you here.
Thank
you
you.
for being part of this show.
Thank you.
And thank you for doing everything that you do.
I appreciate it.
Keep on keeping on.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being part of One on One with Ilan Gilbert.